demo of the first assignment I'm going to give you guys. And it's something that's meant to introduce you to using Illustrator if you haven't used the software before. If you have used Illustrator before, you're going to find this first assignment to be really easy and probably get it done very, very quickly. But that's okay. I also want this first assignment to be foolproof so I can give everybody complete and total points on it and start everybody off with 100% on this. So it's meant to be a very easy grade for you all and something you can use to kind of learn your way around the software. So on Brightspace, I've uploaded some files for you to download, and they're going to be called GD1W1 template1.ai. That is an Adobe Illustrator file. And then there's going to be template number 2, and that's an Adobe Illustrator file. Now, depending on where you're using the computer, whether you're using a Mac or a Windows computer, if you're in the lab or if you're on your own personal computer, where you download things may be a little bit different. In general, what you should see on a Mac is when you download it, there is a folder called Downloads. If you go down to the dock, it's going to be there's going to be an icon, normally by the trash can. It might not look exactly like this, but when you hover, it'll say Downloads over the top. If you click on that, you'll see a list of recently downloaded things. Okay. So if you've downloaded Template 1, Template 2, you may see them there in that list. You may also see them displayed like this. So, again, depending on how the Mac is set up, this can look a couple different ways. But again, you'll see it's really just a list. So there they are. You can also usually access that folder by double-clicking on your hard drive icon if it's available. And over here on the left in the favorites, there's usually a downloads folder. You can find them there. Okay, or sometimes the Macs are set up to download files directly to the desktop, and they'll show up somewhere looking like this. First thing you want to do is you've got your folder for the class. I would open that up. I'd create a new folder. You can do that with this window selected. You can go to File, New Folder, and it'll create a new folder. I would call this Assignment 1 and put your last name. Just again for kind of starting off with a good naming convention on all this stuff will keep things more orderly for you. So there's my folder, and then I want to move these two documents either from the desktop or from the downloads folder. I can click and drop it into that. See how that highlights in blue? That means it's going to open that folder up and put it in there. And then the other one, I'll do the same, drag it and drop it and put it in that folder. Up here at the top of the window, this will tell you that you're inside of that folder. Okay, if you want to get outside of that, you can click back, and there it is. And then you can click here to expand it and view it as a list like that. But after you've downloaded those files, you want to be sure and drag them to your folder. And what you'll do is you'll start out with template number 1. If you double click it, it should open Adobe Illustrator for you. And this may take longer depending on the Mac. And what it's going to do is open up this document that has some really simple shapes on it. Okay. What you're going to do for this assignment is you're going to do 2 templates and you're going to recreate them in Illustrator. Okay. So when you open the document, it should look like this. You may or may not see a little palette called Layers. If you don't, you'll go to the Window menu and go to Layers. Okay. What this is I've got Illustrator, this document is set up to work in multiple layers. What that does, it lets you kind of separate different items and different shapes. So on this layer number 1, I've got all of these shapes drawn out that you're going to recreate. Now I put a lock on it so you can't accidentally click them and move them or anything like that, which will make it easier when you're doing this. And you'll see that layer 1 is highlighted in blue. That means that's the active layer that I'm working on. it won't let me do anything because it's locked. What I want to do is go to layer 2, and this is where I'll draw my new shapes out. And again, that's highlighted in blue, so you know that. Now on the layer palette, this first icon here, that's your visibility. It's an eye, so if I click on the eye for the bottom layer, it hides it. Okay, so that's handy to know. All right, so with layer 2 active, what I want to do is basically go in and recreate these shapes. Now I've zoomed up. A lot of times students feel like they need to work zoomed out like that, and it's really hard. You can zoom in as much as you need to do this. And again, you can use the zoom tool to do that, to click. And again, option, click with the zoom tool, turns it to a minus and zooms out. You can go down here and do that. Or on your keyboard, on a Mac keyboard, you can hit Command plus to zoom in and Command minus to zoom out. Now when you zoom in, some of your document's going to kind of go out of the frame and you won't be able to see it. So what you want to do is reposition it inside the frame. Now at the bottom of the document, you've got a slider that slides. If you click here, should go left to right. Okay. And at the top, you've got one that goes top to bottom if you click on it. An easier way is if you hold down the space bar, it changes to a hand icon, and you can just click and drag it and reposition the window that way. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to look at these shapes and figure out how to best recreate them. Now the top row is made up of a series of lines. I don't have any completed filled in shapes, right? Everything is really just 2 points on these 4 lines, 1, 2, 3 points here. Get used to looking at how these are created and kind of thinking about where a line changes direction. That's where you're going to need a point. That's where you're going to need to create a vector. So this is going to have 1, 2, 3 points. The bottom will have 1, 2, 3. Over here you'll have 1, 2, 3, and 4 points. Okay. So the one thing you want to do is grab your pen tool. And by default, your colors are going to be white and black. That's okay. Actually, let's do this to start with. Go ahead and change your white to no fill, and that's none. It's that first block there. The red line indicates that this won't have a fill on it. You're going to go ahead and start with black. And what you want to do is position your pen at the start of that. And if I drag that, I can position it. I want to keep this perfectly straight. If I hold the Shift key, it snaps it to a completely straight line. And I can create my line. Now you'll see that it wants to continue on to the next point. I don't want to do that, so I need to just click the selection tool to stop that. I'll do the next line here. The other thing I can do, instead of clicking going back here to the selection tool, if I hold down the command key, see how the cursor changes? I can click that. That will stop drawing that line, but then when I release it, I still have my pen tool. Then I can do another here, Shift, click, Command, click, click, Shift, click, and again Command, or I can go up here to the selection tool. It'll turn it off, and then I have to grab the pen tool again. Okay, so I've got my 4 lines drawn. Now on these, what I've got to do is select this one. This one, by default, the line was pretty close. Now I'll zoom in, and maybe I'll position that a little bit better so it looks like it's just the right size. This one, I know it's a little small. I'm going to drag that and put that in the center there, or as close as I can get it. Again, you don't have to be the most precise in the world with this, but just get it as close as you possibly can. And then with that line selected, I can zoom up or increase that a little bit. And I might zoom up and maybe just drag it down a little bit more so it's just the right spot there. Okay. Same here. I'm going to go in and try to center that. And now when I increase that stroke size, it fills that out. Same here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, So there we go. Then what I'll do is I'll move on to the next one. I'll grab my pen tool. Again, there's a starting point. It changes directions here. So I'll click a point there. Then I'll add a point here at the end. Command click to turn that off. And command click to select it again. Or actually get your selection tool to select it. And then you can change the line, decrease that again. I can zoom up to make sure I'm pretty close to that. Width-wise. Sometimes you got to get in even closer. Again, with your selection tool, you can grab it and move it. So it's a little thin, so I'll increase that size a little bit. And this is where it's handy to kind of zoom in close when you're creating these. You can kind of get a better start. So pen tool, click, 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 and I can go ahead and click off of it. Then I can select it with the selection tool and increase the stroke till I'm where I want it, and there we go. Now this guy here, be pretty simple. We have a point, and shift will constrain that to a angle, and then click another point and another point, and get my selection tool that stays selected, and click off. Click it back again, and we'll get this where we can change the stroke size again, and just decrease that till it's approximately the same size as what you see in the template. Again, I can zoom up and position that a little bit, and I'm pretty good. All right, so that's the line tool. Now you do the same thing with your rectangle tool. So grab the rectangle tool, and you can start with a one-point stroke, and I'm going to zoom up and try to get the whole thing in the screen, and I'm going to draw that in the center of that box, because I know when I create my line, it expands on both sides of the box there. So we can do that. And that's pretty good. And then we can click and move on to the next. All right, so that's that. And then with these squares, what I want to do is I can position my cursor right there on that corner. And drag it out. Now what I've got is a black outline with no fill color underneath. What I can do is I can go up here to the stroke box and make that none, and then make the fill black. And then I would do the same for this square. Same procedure for the oval and the circle. Just grab the ellipse tool. And now what I have to do here is kind of figure out where I want to start drawing. And you can kind of fake that. And what you'll probably have to do, okay, see there, what I have is if I look up here, by default I've got it set to have a fill with no stroke. I don't want that. I want no fill and a black stroke so that I can see what I'm drawing underneath. And then I can take this and I can just pull this into shape. I don't have to worry about being super precise when I first draw it. I can move these different handles and kind of get it just right and go in and adjust the stroke there. For my next one, this is a complete circle or an actual circle. I'll hold down shift and that constrains it to a circle, and then I'm going to try to eyeball that in there. And if I hold down shift, I can shrink this up and keep it in a perfect circle, and I can grab those different corners and kind of muscle it into place there. Okay, and then you can do the same for those two. These down here are meant to give you a little bit of practice with the pen tool, because like I said, it's one of the more complicated tools. especially when we get into curves. So look closely at these lines before you draw them. If I look where the line changes direction, so we start here, it changes direction here, 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 and here. So I'll click here, and then I'll grab and position my cursor here, click and drag, and see it drags out that curve. Now I don't have to drag it out much, and then I'll position it here about the center there and drag it out, and drag it out, and click, and we've got that. Okay. Now the one underneath is a little trickier. We've got a starting point and an end point and no changes of direction in between. So what I can do is click and drag to drag down, and click and drag over and drag up. Okay, and then I can drag that. Now that throws it off on this side. What I want to do is change this handle so I can get my direct selection tool up here, grab that handle, and try to get it just right and make some adjustments by adjusting those handles. Okay, so that will give you some practice selecting handles and adjusting them, and kind of learning how that works. Here, it's a little trickier because of the shape, but look at the shape, think about it. So here we have our starting point, then we have a direction change here. So I'm going to click right about there. We have another direction change here. We have a direction change here. Here, and I'm clicking and dragging to get those handles. And then here and here. Now it's pretty close. The line's a little fat, so let's select it with the selection tool. Click off, click back on it. Across the top here, you can now change that. Let's make that a little bit smaller so we can see what we're doing. We'll grab the direct selection tool again. Click and just reshape this a little bit. We click a point, its handles appear. Click a point, we can move that point a little bit. Here, this one's a little trickier. You'll have to kind of play around with it, but get it again as close as you can to reproducing this shape and this line weight and all that. Then down here, we'll do the same thing. We'll look at the shapes, think about where direction changes are. So I see a change here, a change here, and a change here. You could even maybe argue there's one here. So I'll click and drag, click and drag, click and drag, and I think I can pull this one off by just clicking and dragging that one up. Then direct select those handles and kind of pull and tug on those to reform those lines. You'll do the same thing here and try to figure that out. Now, once you've got this document completed, you've reproduced all of these shapes, and you can reproduce them in black just so you can have some contrast between the original and your version. Once you've done that, you would go to File and Save As. And then you will locate wherever your folder is. Mine is on the desktop, so I'll go in here. And if you're not seeing desktop, you may be seeing something else like a documents folder. But if I go to desktop, I'll see my folder. I'll click on that, and then assignment 1. And then you want to call this GD1W1 template 1 underscore your last name. And make sure the format is Adobe Illustrator. Save that. And most of these settings, don't worry about them. The defaults are good, so hit OK. Then check your folder and make sure that it's saved, and it's saved with the proper name. Okay? So that's going to be the first template. I'll do a demo to show you the second template. I'll do that in another video. All right.